Happy for us to start?
Okay.
Happy?
So, welcome to the science session here, this international session. My name is Paul Buchwein. I'm from Graz, an orthopedic and trauma surgeon. And this is Simon. Carley is my co-host for this session, and he will replace Victoria. Perhaps you know the details.
Yeah, Victoria is the much prettier one, who is much cleverer than me, who will be here tomorrow. She's lost her voice. She's resting it today. So I am actually someone completely different. So we got 3 sessions today. They're all linked about how we really do things as opposed to what we think we do. And that's the theme of these 3 talks, and I think you will enjoy them. They build on each other. I was delighted to meet Frank yesterday, Frank Ophey. He's from the InPass company, and he has an extremely interesting experience about teaching human factors, about how we do things in the workplace. So I'm delighted to welcome Frank to the stage. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Ja, willkommen von meiner Seite. Mein Name ist Frank Ophey. Ich komme vom Institut für Patientensicherheit und Teamtraining aus Reutlingen in Deutschland. Wir befassen uns seit vielen, vielen Jahren mit der Problematik oder Thematik Human Factor, Crew Resource Management und Entstehung, Ursachen von Fehlern. Und in diesem Zusammenhang, bevor ich mit meinem Vortrag beginne, möchte ich hier ganz klar sagen, da wir Anbieter von Trainings sind, kann der eine oder andere auch sagen, gut, das ist nicht ganz so interessenfrei, aber unterm Strich möchten wir heute miteinander eine Session erleben, das Thema Crew Resource Management, Human Factor in die Belegschaft, unter die Kollegen bringen, um daraus einen Mehrwert für unsere Patienten zu erzielen und im zweiten Schritt natürlich auch ein sichereres Gefühl für unsere Mitarbeiter zu erzeugen. Denn ich glaube, dem einen oder anderen ist schon mal was schiefgegangen und das Gefühl danach ist nicht so gut. Und jetzt wäre es eben schön, wenn man sich darüber offen unterhalten könnte und müsste sich nicht in der einen oder anderen Situation überlegen, mit wem darf ich denn jetzt drüber sprechen, dass mir nichts passiert. Und in diesem Zusammenhang soll dieser Vortrag so gestaltet sein, dass ich Ihnen nicht sagen will, wie Sie es machen sollen oder was Sie machen sollen. Im Endeffekt, das, was Inhalt dieses Vortrags sein wird, sind viele Dinge, die Sie bereits im Alltag schon tun. Es kommt vielleicht darauf an, dass wir sagen, wir machen es bewusster und wir nutzen es bewusster für uns und unsere Kollegen. Und damit möchte ich Ihnen Anregungen und Erkenntnisse mitteilen aus über 20 Jahren der Forschung und Training mit medizinischen Teams in allen Bereichen, sowohl präklinisch als auch im klinischen Bereich. Wie Sie alle wissen, ist Notfallmedizin eine sehr, sehr, sehr komplexe Aufgabe, ein sehr komplexes Tätigkeitsfeld. Zumindest in Deutschland haben wir in der präklinischen Notfallmedizin nicht diesen Rettungswagen, der nur zu Kindernotfällen rausfährt oder der nur zu Trauma rausfährt oder nur zum Herzinfarkt. Ich weiß nicht, wie es in Österreich ist. Auch nicht anders. Und von daher ist es eben schwierig, das gesamte medizinische Feld von A bis Z beherrschen zu wollen. Das ist ein Ding der Unmöglichkeit. Das heißt, wir brauchen das Team. Wir brauchen die Erfahrungen. Der eine ist im Bereich des Traumas stärker, der andere im Bereich der Kinderversorgung. Ein dritter kennt sich vielleicht besser aus mit der präklinischen Geburt. Aber wenn der Melder aufgeht, wissen wir nicht, was auf uns zukommt und wir haben wenig Vorbereitungszeit. Und diese Dinge dann zu managen, die Erfahrung zu machen, die Erkenntnisse in möglichst angemessener Zeit so zu erhalten, dass wir eine solide Patientenversorgung durchführen können, das ist die Schwierigkeit. Und das funktioniert nicht immer. Und wenn es schief geht und wenn die Versorgungen nicht so optimal laufen, wie wir uns das vorstellen, sind es in der Regel vermeidbare Ursachen, annähernd 70%, wie sich immer wieder in Querschnittsuntersuchungen ergeben, die dem Human Factor zugrunde liegen. Und der Human Factor ist nicht das mangelnde Fachwissen, sondern es sind die Probleme bei der Umsetzung unter den ungünstigsten Bedingungen in der Realität. Lassen Sie mich das kurz an einem Beispiel erklären. Sie kennen sicherlich alle Megacode- oder Reanimationstrainings. Und nicht selten gehen unsere Teilnehmer nach diesen Trainings aus dem Raum und sagen, ja, draußen ist anders. Und wir haben uns so eine Mühe gegeben in der Vorbereitung unseres Trainings, oder? Wir wollten gut sein, wir geben den Platz. Wir machen es im Klassenzimmer in der Mitte, damit die Geräte schön aufgebaut werden können. Oh, hey, optimale Bedingungen, Leute, freut euch doch. Und die gehen raus und sagen, ja, draußen ist anders. Weil wir trainieren eben nicht, dass wir unseren Patienten aus der Badewanne rausholen müssen vor der Reanimation. Dass wir vielleicht Oma Lieschen vorher im Winter ausziehen müssen mit 7 Schichten. Das bilden wir im Training nicht ab. Und dann wundern wir uns, wenn unsere Teilnehmer sagen, ja, aber draußen ist anders. Und dieser andere Einstieg in dieses Reanimationsverhalten, das bringt den einen oder anderen auch aus dem Trott. Und dann wirkt eben der Human Factor. Und in der Ausbildung ist es leider immer noch nicht, obwohl ganz viele Erkenntnisse, es ganz viele Untersuchungen in der Wissenschaft gibt, die sagen, wenn wir das Human Factor, das Crew Resource Management Wissen in die curriculäre Ausbildung einbinden, dann können wir noch einen höheren Benefit erzielen. Ist es leider noch nicht so, sondern wir sind am Anfang dieser Entwicklung und viele unterstützen uns mittlerweile und integrieren das schon in die Grundlagenbildung, was am Ende eine bessere medizinische Versorgung für unsere Patienten bewirken kann. In der Luftfahrt ist es ein klein wenig einfacher herauszubekommen, woran kann es denn so liegen. Und da gibt es vom Kiedis-Mukes eine ganz interessante Untersuchung, der in seinem Buch The Limits of Expertise herausgefunden hat, dass die Fehler auch systematisch entstehen. Und zwar war die Grundlage dieser Untersuchung, dass man von den abgestürzten Flugzeugmaschinen, von den Flugzeugen, die den Flughafen nicht sicher erreicht haben, hat man die Flugdaten rausgelesen und hat damit die Simulatoren gefüttert. Und dann hat man die Piloten mit diesen Ausgangsdaten in diese Übung geschickt, im Simulator. Und im Ergebnis wären 85% der Piloten genauso abgestürzt wie die Kollegen, die es erwischt hat. Und jetzt denkt man drüber nach und sagt, dann sind es wahrscheinlich doch nicht die Dummen, die Fehler machen, oder? Sondern wir sollten uns überlegen, wie ist denn unsere systematische Ausbildung auf dem Weg? Also scheint die systematische Ausbildung falsch zu sein. Und wenn Sie Lust haben, lassen Sie uns einfach mal in einem kleinen Experiment, das ist nichts Schwieriges, mal den Human Factor am eigenen Leib erfahren. Haben Sie Lust? Einfache Rechenaufgabe, bitte Taschenrechner weg, nicht mit dem Nachbarn schwatzen, jeder mal für sich. Es ist nur Plus. Einfache Addition, mehr nichts. Wir beginnen. Rechnen Sie bitte 1000 plus 40 und legen Sie noch einen Tausender drauf. 30 dazu. Tausender drauf. Geht's noch? Gut. 20 drauf. Noch ein Tausender und am Ende noch 10. Wer hat 5000 raus? Wie viel? Wer? Bitte deutlich, ruhig deutlich. Ja, doch eine ganze Reihe. Wollen wir noch mal gucken? Jetzt haben wir es schriftlich, jetzt haben wir eine Merkhilfe, die uns zur Verfügung steht. Jetzt ist der Kopf allein ausgeschalten. Und wenn wir jetzt unterm Strich zusammenziehen, oh, wer war noch mal 5000? So, hat jemand was anderes herausgehabt als diese 4100 oder 5000? Gibt es ein drittes Ergebnis im Raum? Oh, nein. Spannend, oder? Wir haben zwar ein falsches Ergebnis im Raum und ein richtiges Ergebnis, aber das Falsche ist auch schon wieder einheitlich. Und hier sind wir im Human Factor. Weil unser Gehirn, das mag sich nicht immer und permanent, und jetzt ist es kurz vor der Mittagspause, so anstrengen. Und dann merken wir haben irgendwo die 90 im Kopf und mit dem 10er rundet sich was nach vorn. Dann nehmen wir großzügig ganz nach vorn. Pam, 5000. Wir kommen nicht auf 3999 oder irgendwas anderes Verrücktes. Nein, es sind die gleichen Fehler. Und das ist unser Gehirn, unser Human Factor. Und wenn es dann in der medizinischen Versorgung manchmal schief geht, dann ist es Human Factor. Sie kennen ja vielleicht so einen Patienten, der kommt schweißig mit Ausschlag und Atemnot und das Team sagt, hey Leute, Anaphylaxie. Und wir behandeln Anaphylaxie. Und jetzt kommt die Pflegekraft vom Frühdienst rein und sagt, ich wollte sagen, der Ausschlag, der ist schon seit 14 Tagen. Ja, ist egal, Anaphylaxie gibt es auch ohne Ausschlag. Und wir machen weiter. Unser Gehirn mag es einfach. Und das ist die Geschichte Human Factor. Und eben, ne, ob es genau 85% sind, ich kann es Ihnen nicht genau sagen, aber im Wesentlichen so 70% sind Human Factor dabei. Und das zu erkennen, das bewusst im Team einzubringen, umzusetzen, das ist die Aufgabe, die Leben retten kann. David Gaba hat die Definition für das Crew Resource Management, wir sagen so diese Non-Technical Skills dazu, mal niedergeschrieben. Und ich brauche sie Ihnen nicht im Detail vorlesen, aber das Entscheidende sind hier die unübersichtlichen Bedingungen der Realität im Alltag. Das steht in keinem Lehrbuch. Und Sie kommen zum Dienst und Sie sind vielleicht im Anflug einer Erkältung und meinen aber, nee, jetzt Krankenschein, das kann ich meinen Kollegen nicht zumuten. Und Sie treten Ihren Dienst an und sind aber schon deswegen nicht mehr so aufmerksam und so leistungsfähig, als wären Sie 100% gesund. Oder Sie kommen müde zum Dienst und sagen noch zum Kollegen, kannst du heute mal ein bisschen auf mich aufpassen, ich bin noch so müde. Was meinen Sie, wie der Kollege reagiert? Ja, aufpassen, wenn man Dienst hat, hat man Dienst, da kann man abends nicht so lange auf der Piste sein. Ne? So, aber nein, was er nicht wusste, ist, dass mein Kind die Nacht gezahnt hat und ich deswegen schlechter geschlafen habe. Ah, okay. Aber so weit sind wir noch nicht, dass wir das regelhaft mit unseren Kollegen teilen und austauschen. Und im Bereich des Human Factors haben wir hier das Crew Resource Management Molekül. Im Endeffekt geht es ja darum, wie ist die situative Aufmerksamkeit, und zwar eines jeden Einzelnen im Team. Kann der Teamleader vom Kopf aus auch wirklich den Patienten ganzheitlich sehen oder ist vielleicht eine Decke, die zusammengerollt über dem Abdomen liegt, eine Sichtbehinderung. Aber das Teammitglied, was am Fußende steht, sieht beispielsweise die dort vorhandene Wunde. Sagt er das jetzt? Darf er das sagen? Wird er gehört? Spannende Fragen. Ne? Die Frage ist Teamwork. Wie bringen wir die Arbeit ans Team? Ganz simple Beispiele haben Sie sicherlich hier und da schon mal erlebt, wenn Sie sagen, kann mal jemand den Blutdruck messen? Da sage ich mir immer so, ja, könnte ich, aber bin ich jemand? Oder Blutdruck messen ist einfach, da brauche ich nicht denken, jetzt sind 5 Leute weg, die gleichzeitig Blutdruck messen wollen. Das war nicht konkret. Ne? Wie verteilen wir die Aufgaben im Team? Ich habe heute meinen 10. Dienst, ich habe gestern das schon gemacht, muss ich heute wieder. Boah, kann doch die Petra mal, die macht sonst, aber gehen wieder Sekunden ins Land. Aber eins ist sicherlich entscheidend für die Entscheidungsfindung. Da brauchen wir einen im Team. Ne? Das Team kann bis dahin helfen, aber irgendwann muss eine Entscheidung getroffen werden und dann sollte das Team wieder folgen. Und zwar zielgerichtet und effizient. Und die Schnittstelle des Ganzen, der Klebstoff sozusagen, ist die Kommunikation. Und wir können nonverbal kommunizieren und wir können auch reden. Und ich finde, manchmal sind Patientenversorgungen in geübten Teams, die sich kennen, einfach famos zu beobachten. Da wird kaum gesprochen und das flutscht. Aber die sprechen schon miteinander, nur eben mit einem Augenzwinkern, mit einem Kopfnicken, mit einem kurzen Zeigen, weil man sich kennt. Das Problem ist jetzt, derjenige Kollege, der in dieses geübte Team hineinkommt und diese Zeichensprache nicht kennt, der ist raus. Der kann nicht mitmachen. Und in der Wahrnehmung der anderen Kollegen ist, boah, der ist aber wieder faul, sowas nützt mir ja nichts. Vielleicht hätten wir es einmal sagen sollen. Und diese Erkenntnisse, letztendlich, die auf diesem Molekül basieren, sind hier in diesen 15 Leitsätzen letztendlich so als Überschrift zusammengefasst, dass es keine neue Checkliste ist, aber wo wir sagen, wenn es schwierig wird, dann finden Sie in 70% der Fälle mindestens einen dieser Gründe hier in diesen Leitsätzen. Wir haben diese Kärtchen für Sie dabei, die lassen wir jetzt im Laufe des Vortrags mit rumgehen, wenn es Sie interessieren sollte. Nee, auswendig lernen. Wir haben extra so ein Kitteltaschenformat gewählt, dass man es einstecken kann und zum Nachschlagen gedacht. Schauen wir uns doch einmal den Punkt 7 an, die sichere und effektive Kommunikation, sag, was dich bewegt. Sie kennen sicherlich die Kommunikationstreppe, das ist nichts Neues und ich möchte auch mit Ihnen keine Eulen nach Athen tragen. Aber das ist das, was regelhaft wirkt. Und wenn Sie meinen, wir haben einen Patienten mit retrosternalem Schmerz, ausstrahlende linke Schulter, schweißig, Atemnot, ringförmig, ist ja klar, das ist ein Infarkt, oder? Muss man nicht sagen, mir ist das klar. Aber habe ich es auch mal gesagt, dass ich den Verdacht darauf habe? Oder traut sich der Kollege zu sagen, vielleicht könnten wir auch an Interkostalneuralgie denken? Bin mir nicht sicher, lass uns mal checken. Aber jetzt wird es schwierig, ne? Mit 2 Meinungen, wie bringen wir die unter einen Hut? Schockraumversorgung, wer übernimmt den Lead? Schwierige Probleme, Human Factor. Und auch hier im privaten Bereich, wenn ich da manchmal so sage, eine Frau sagt zu mir, Schatz, bring mir doch mal die Schuhe. Und dann bringe ich die Schuhe dahin und sagt sie, nicht die braunen, wollte die schwarzen haben. Habe ich gelernt, beim nächsten Mal hat sie es zwar gesagt, aber ich muss es ja nicht gehört haben. Ne? So, das spart Ärger. Und selbst wenn ich es gehört habe, muss ich es nicht zwingend verstanden haben. Eben, Schuhe, für mich waren die braunen genauso wie die schwarzen Schuhe. Ne? Aber da gab es noch so einen kleinen Unterschied und manchmal ist es in der Medizin eben auch so. Wir könnten den HWI mal verlegen. Okay, ich rufe auf der Urologie an. Was will der Hinterwandinfarkt auf der Urologie? Ich dachte, du meinst einen Harnwegsinfekt. Einfache Kommunikationen, die schiefgehen. Ne? Und wenn es verstanden wurde, ist es noch nicht gemacht. Und einige sagen noch, am Ende gehört auch noch nicht gut gemacht mit dahin. Okay. Aber es müssen beide Seiten wissen. Und das ist das Wichtige. Und vielleicht ist es Ihnen auch schon mal passiert bei einer Versorgung, dass Sie Ihrem Kollegen in irgendeiner Art und Weise einen wichtigen Parameter, einen Vitalwert gesagt haben, und der reagiert nicht drauf. Und die erste Idee ist, boah, ist der heute wieder bockig. Aber er ist nicht bockig, er war konzentriert und hat sie wirklich nicht gehört. Nur war es mir nicht bewusst, dass er mich nicht gehört hat. Und ich meinte, der mag jetzt nicht mit mir reden. Oder die Anästhesisten unter Ihnen, ne? Wenn Sie da so am Intubieren sind und der Patient kriegt so einen Sauerstoffsättigungsabfall und der Rettungssanitäter sagt Ihnen, Sättigung ist jetzt 93, 92, 91. Oh, hör auf, was denkst du, was ich hier mache? Ne? Nicht sicher kommuniziert. Happy Hour im Team, so schnell geht's. Vielleicht noch ein Beispiel aus einem Rettungswagen, der auf einer Fehlkommunikation beruhen kann. Zum einen haben wir hier den Notfallpatienten, der ist wach mit einer instabilen VT. Das ist dem Team bekannt und klar. Jetzt meint der Notarzt, wir würden den mal sedieren wollen. Okay, jetzt beginnen wir mit Medikamente vorbereiten und alle sind akut beschäftigt, monitorisieren etc., all was da in so einer Situation noch zu tun ist. Der Notarzt fragt jetzt so in den RTW hinein, kann ich kardiovertieren? Und in dem Moment fragt die Leitstelle über Funk, soll ich eurem Patienten schon mal im Herzkatheterlabor anmelden? Und der zweite Rettungssanitäter antwortet laut, ja, bitte, ganz nett. Bock. Au! Allen war klar, was passiert. Ne? Aber es war nicht klar, wer zu welchem Zeitpunkt welche Aufgabe machen soll. Sind wir schon so weit? Ja, nein. Alle haben es gut gemeint. Wollte das jemand von den 3 Leuten im RTW? Nee. Aber gut, so ein Notfall, da muss man schon mal was aushalten. Und medizinisch gesehen war es richtig. Riesel und Mourinho, so Arbeitspsychologen, haben sich auch viel mit der Entstehung und Ursachen von Fehlern beschäftigt und haben eines Tages den Ausdruck oder die These herausgebracht, Fehler sind nicht die Ursachen von Zwischenfällen. Als ich den Satz das erste Mal las, dachte ich mir so, oh ja, psychologische Sichtweise. Aber Wissenschaft, Sie haben es natürlich begründet und jetzt wird das Ganze fassbar. Sie sind der Ansicht, und dem können wir uns anschließen, dass es, bevor es zu einem Fehler kommt, bestimmte Umstände geben muss, die zu diesem Fehler führen. Und auch dann, wenn dieser Fehler im Raum schwebt, muss er den Patienten nicht direkt erreichen, sondern es braucht noch beitragende Faktoren, die letztendlich ihn dann beim Patienten ankommen lassen. Und an all diesen Stellen könnten wir Veränderungen treffen im Team durch unterschiedlichste Instrumente, durch Nutzung unterschiedlichster Tools, damit eben der Patient am Ende für unser Beispiel nicht aussagen muss. Lassen Sie uns das mal mit dem Beispiel nochmal betrachten. Wir haben hier zum einen den Notfallpatienten, der die instabile VT hat. Hätte der eine stabile VT oder wäre er bewusstlos? Hey, no problem. Aber nein, der ist wach. Okay, andere Situation. Ne? Wir haben die Akustik in dem RTW. Wir stehen mit unserem RTW im Gelände, auf den Straßen, wir haben Außengeräusche, Störgeräusche, also auf engstem Raum. Viele erzählen, wir haben das Funkrauschen dabei, all Dinge, die wir filtern müssen, vielleicht auch reagieren. Sie kennen die vielfältigen Aufgaben. Und eben hier in dem Fall die Instabilität bei dem Patienten, das heißt, das Team empfindet auch Druck. und möchten den gewählten Weg zu Ende gehen und sich nicht zwischendrin vielleicht nochmal umentscheiden müssen. Und jetzt kommen die beitragenden Faktoren dazu. Zum einen hier der Prozess der Vorbereitung der Sedierungsmedikamente und es findet trotz der geringen Räumlichkeit eines RTWs keine geschlossene Kommunikation statt. Und wenn wir uns jetzt an die These von Mourinho und Riesen zurückerinnern, Fehler sind nicht die Ursachen, dann schauen wir mal, wie wir hier Ursachen oder Bedingungen ändern können. Und wir haben hier vielleicht die Verwendung einer konkret persönlichen Ansprache, indem wir den Rettungssanitäter anspricht, der die Medikamente anreicht oder vorbereitet und wir dann beispielsweise sagen, Andreas, wie weit bist du mit den Medikamenten? Hast du schon Sedierung eingeleitet? Und dann kann er gezielter antworten, ja, nein, wie auch immer. Und jetzt wird die Entscheidung sicherer. Ne? Aber durch dieses Allgemeine, kann ich kardiovertieren? Missverständnis, war der andere, der gar nicht auf die Frage geantwortet hat, aber das Ja war im Raum, Pam. Durch persönliche Ansprache kriegen wir das Ganze stabiler und sicherer hin. Und damit kommt eben dieser Fehler nicht mehr beim Patienten an, sondern wenn wir sagen, Andreas, kann ich? Nein, warte, ich muss noch ganz kurz. Okay, kommt er nie auf die Idee, den Ladeknopf und die Entladung zu drücken, sondern wartet die Sekunden noch ab. Aber dabei haben wir das Missverständnis unserer subjektiv empfundener Zeitdruck. Wir meinen, im Notfall haben wir immer keine Zeit. Ich glaube, mittlerweile nach Einführung des ABCDE-Schemas sind Ihre Übergaben in den Spitälern auch ruhiger geworden und geordneter. Aber häufig ist es ja so, dass man mit dem Notfallpatienten da reinkommt und jeder muss schon mal anfangen, so Kabel ab, neues Kabel zurechtlegen und dann stört der Beatmungsbeutel noch auf dem Bein mit dem Ob beiseite legen und dann wird übergeben und plötzlich gehen schon wieder Informationen verloren und es wird hektisch und man meint, vielleicht braucht der Kollege Hilfe und ich konzentriere mich gar nicht mehr auf das Gehörte. Ne? Und jetzt wird es wieder schwierig. Von daher haben wir einen subjektiv empfundenen Zeitdruck, das ist aber falsch. Überlegen Sie mal, wenn Sie eine falsche oder eine nicht optimale Versorgung durchführen, es kommt zu einer Komplikation, dann haben wir alle Zeit der Welt, diese Komplikation wieder aufzuarbeiten. In Klammern, weil wir es auch müssen. Aber das kommt uns nie vor wie verschenkte Zeit, weil wir waren ja aktiv. Wenn wir das aber im Vorfeld einmal ganz kurz stoppen können, uns Gedanken machen, was ist unser Behandlungsplan, wer macht wann was, dann können wir die Zeit nach hinten vom Anfang wieder sehr, sehr aufholen. Dann haben wir 10, 15 Sekunden für Planung verloren, am Ende uns aber die 10 Minuten Komplikationsbehandlung gespart, weil wir geordnet arbeiten. Manchmal sind wir zu schnell oder zu hektisch. Das ist gar nicht vorwurfsvoll gemeint. Vielleicht erinnern Sie sich mal, der Notarzt kommt in eine Notfallsituation dazu, wie schnell der manchmal mit den Händen am Patienten ist. Übergaben, schnell, vielleicht parallel zum gesprochenen Wort, damit Informationsverlust. Und mir ging es zumindest gar nicht so selten so, dass ich dem Notarzt eine Übergabe meines Patienten machte und er wenig später dem Patienten genau das nochmal gefragt hat, was ich ihm gerade gesagt habe. Und ich so im ersten Moment so, boah, warum gebe ich mir die Mühe der Übergabe? Aber der war konzentriert, Ad 1 und zweitens, nach 5 Informationen ist zu. Da geht nichts mehr in der Kürze der Zeit auf die Festplatte. Ne? Deswegen kein böser Wille, aber wieder Missverständnis. Hätten wir uns ein bisschen Zeit genommen, Zeit auch für eine Rückfrage, wäre der Prozess vielleicht anders geordneter gelaufen. Und eben, wir denken, wir haben für Absprachen im Notfall keine Zeit. Aber sichere, effektive Kommunikation dauert nicht so ewig lang. Das heißt, auch in kritischen Situationen ist immer Zeit für die Form der Teamorganisation. Und am Ende wird es geordneter und wir gehen aus dem Notfall mit einem besseren Gefühl heraus und sagen, wow, das hat aber heute funktioniert, das war ruhig, das war geordnet, das hat Spaß gemacht. Und eben nicht so, das war wieder chaotisch, müssen wir das nächste Mal besser machen. Ja was? Ne? Immer die spannende Frage dabei. Und es ist manchmal so, und deswegen die Metapher hier mit dem Schnellzug, dass das Crew-Resource-Management gar nicht an Bord kommt, weil uns die medizinischen Ereignisse der Patient so drückt. Er macht uns einen zeitlichen Druck, der ist vital instabil, da müssen wir ja was tun, müssen wir ja aktiv werden. Und schwupps, fährt der Zug durch, CRM kommt nicht an Bord und von daher haben wir wenig Möglichkeiten, das Team wieder zu nivellieren, auf einen Stand zu bekommen und jeder arbeitet so ein bisschen für sich, natürlich für den Patienten und vor dem Hintergrund nichts falsch machen zu wollen. Ne? Das ist der Grundsatz. Ich weiß nicht, ob Sie einen Kollegen kennen oder vielleicht selber die Einstellung haben, dass Sie heute zum Dienst gehen und dann sagen, ich mache heute mal bewusst was falsch. Guck mal, auf die Frage habe ich noch nie ein Ja bekommen. Ne? Das ist gut so. Und trotzdem funktioniert es manchmal nicht. Und das ist die Schwierigkeit, das ist unser vorbeifahrender Zug. Jetzt haben wir in vielen Teamtrainings gesehen, was helfen kann, diese Hektik aus einem medizinischen Team herauszubekommen. Und wir nennen es das 10-für-10-Prinzip, wo wir symbolisch 10 Sekunden dafür verwenden, die symbolisch nächsten 10 Minuten zu planen. Indem wir in diesem Stop und jeder hört zu und keiner macht was. Und das ist Höchststrafe für medizinisches Personal. Zuhören, nichts machen. Das muss man lernen und das muss man am Anfang aushalten. Weil das kann doch nicht so schwer oder ist doch nicht so schlimm, wenn ich mal das Kabel noch anklipse. Ich höre doch zu. Oder wenn ich mal fix das Laryngoskop noch checke. Ich höre doch zu. Nee, es geht Information verloren. Öfter als uns lieb ist. Und deswegen zuhören, alle einbeziehen in die Besprechung und Expertise abfragen. Und jetzt kann zum Beispiel die ein oder andere Frage auftauchen. Wollen wir nicht hier noch eventuell das, soll ich das noch mit vorbereiten? Oder. Okay, nicht jetzt, vielleicht später und dann machen wir weiter. Und dieses 10-für-10-Prinzip beruhigt unsere akutmedizinischen Teams. Es bringt Ordnung in den medizinischen Ablauf und die Dinge werden häufiger, a. zuverlässiger, b. nicht doppelt gemacht und c. seltener vergessen. Und dabei können Checklisten sogar helfen, wenn sie gut gemacht sind. ABCDE ist eine hervorragende und wertvolle Checkliste dabei, wenn sie regelhaft angewendet wird. Das heißt, wir haben immer ein paar Sekunden Zeit, das Team abzugleichen, uns zu besprechen. Und vielleicht nochmal, damit Sie hier nochmal erfahren können, wann wir das machen und wie. Ich glaube, es ist immer ein Grund dann gegeben, wenn man neue Diagnosen oder neue Probleme am Patienten entdeckt, wenn sich neue Erkenntnisse ergeben, wenn wir den einmal gefassten Plan verändern müssen. Ganz kurz abgleichen, anhalten, wer macht jetzt was. Können Sie vielleicht sich um eine Sauerstoffversorgung kümmern? Ja, komm, machen. Können Sie 12 Kanäle? Bei dem kenne ich mich nicht so aus. Okay, kennst du dich mit dem? Jawohl. So, und schon ist es geordneter. Ja? Und wenn irgendwas hektisch wird oder wenn einer den Anschluss verliert als Teammitglied, sagt, hey, Leute, ganz kurz, stopp, mir ist gerade hier der Kontext verloren gegangen. Was behandeln wir jetzt? Anaphylaxie oder hämodynamischen Schock? Doch, die Anna. Okay, weiter geht's. Ne? Ganz kurze Momente, Stopps, die das Team abgleichen können. Und jeder kann es sozusagen beantragen. Es darf beim Anwenden des 10-für-10 kein Hemmnis sein, wenn man sagen, ich bin doch nur der Rettungssanitäter oder das 10-für-10 darf bei uns nur der Arzt einfordern. Nein, jeder im Team, der meint, jetzt wird es mir zu kompliziert, zu hektisch, darf das beantragen. Aber bitte eins, und deswegen muss es trainiert und geübt sein, der Teamleader sollte am Ende dann doch festlegen, jetzt machen wir kurz das 10-für-10, damit wir uns nicht mit 10 Sekunden durch 50 Minuten hindurch pausieren. Ne? Das wäre der falsche Ansatz. Sondern, hey, lass uns das noch fertig machen, wir sichern noch den Atemweg, wir fixieren den Tubus, dann machen wir eine kurze Besprechung. Okay? Alles klar, machen wir weiter. So kriegen wir Ordnung in die Teams. Und damit haben wir also hier die Möglichkeit, auch bei dieser Stop-Inject-Geschichte Ruhe in die oder Medikationssicherheit zu erlangen. Vielleicht kennen Sie das, wenn Sie IV applizieren und der Spritzenkolben trifft unten auf dem Boden der Spritzen auf, der Spritzenhülle auf. Schon mal gehört, so dieses? Ja, dieses Geräusch an sich macht plötzlich so ein komisches Gefühl. War es verdünnt? War es pur? Oh. Gucken, Glück. Ne? Das vorsehen, wo wir sagen, diese reflektorische Schlaufe, jetzt bevor ich spritze, ganz kurz innehalten, schauen, was ist es, was habe ich für einen Patienten und was ist es für einen Zugang und jetzt geben. Und das Ganze trainieren in die Teams, implementieren und auch da das 10 für 10 bewusst nutzen, um die Medikationssicherheit letztendlich zu erhöhen. Und jetzt hält der Zug an und jetzt kann CRM auch an Bord kommen. Und jetzt kommen wir zu einer geordneten Patientenversorgung, ähnlich wie beim Bergsteigen. Was macht es, dass der Bergsteiger sicher in den Berg und vor allen Dingen wieder herauskommt? Sind es diese Dinge, die hier angeschrieben sind? Ich glaube, es ist am Ende das Seil zum Kameraden. Und wenn wir dieses Seil zum Kameraden in die Medizin transferieren, dann sind es diese Umstände, die uns eben manchmal Schwierigkeiten bereiten. Und wenn wir jetzt mit dem Seil das CRM-trainierte Teammitglied am anderen Ende haben, können wir uns auffangen und uns sicherer um die Patienten kümmern. Und wenn wir dann dahin kommen, dass wir sagen, ich passe auf dich auf, du passt auf mich auf, dann kriegen wir eine sichere Patientenversorgung hin. Vielen Dank.
So are there any questions in German or English? We have the simultaneous translation. I think two questions.
So, ich habe eine Frage über die geschlossene Kommunikation. Wie kann man das am besten üben?
Durch Teamtrainings im Sinne von Wahrnehmung. Der Erwachsene lernt initial erstmal nichts, weil er hat noch keinen Bedarf für sich. Ne? Wenn ich Ihnen aber, nehmen Sie die Rechenaufgabe, mit einem Beispiel deutlich machen kann, so wirkt das, dann können wir uns gemeinsam die Tools überlegen, die dafür helfen können. Und eine Schlüsselstelle dazu könnte zum Beispiel ein Kommunikationstraining sein. Dass es manchmal für einen Erwachsenen komisch ist, wenn ich sage, hier, du wolltest 10 Milligramm Diazepam auf 10 Milliliter Nazel haben, ich habe hier 10 Milligramm Diazepam in 10 Milliliter Nazel und der guckt und sagt, ja, 10 Milliliter, alles gut. Ich spritze jetzt 10 Milligramm Diazepam verdünnt auf 10 Milliliter Nazel, 10 Milligramm Diazepam sind drin. Müßig, ne? Spießig. Aber effizient.
Any other question? So, okay.
Danke für den schönen Vortrag. Frank, du siehst ja doch öfter Teams, die noch gar nie trainiert haben miteinander, die schon trainiert haben miteinander oder die oft trainiert haben miteinander. Seht ihr da auch einen Erfolg, eine Änderung des Verhaltens in diesen Teams, wenn man zum Beispiel in irgendein Spital kommt und mit denen trainiert und das öfter macht?
Ja, natürlich, ein Benefit liegt auf alle Fälle darin, dass man sagt, man muss es wiederholen, regelmäßig machen. Also einmal trainieren und meinen, ich habe für die nächsten 20 Jahre CRM mit der Muttermilch aufgesogen, funktioniert nicht. Auch hier gibt es Vergessensquote. Und eben, wenn man das Beispiel Diazepam hernimmt, es ist mit der Zeit müßig und dann merkt man, es funktioniert sicher und dann lassen wir es wieder einmal weg und dann schleicht es sich wieder aus. Aber der Wiederholungseffekt ist A notwendig und B vielleicht ein Beispiel aus einem Schockraumtraining. Maximalversorger machen normales Schockraumtraining mit Anästhesie, Chirurgie, entsprechend ZNA-Personal und wir bringen als Beispielpatient ein Kind. Und jetzt haben wir gefragt, hey, ihr habt doch als Maximalversorger Pädiater im Haus. Warum ruft ihr keinen Pädiater zur Hilfe? Und bekommen zur Antwort, der ist im Schockraummodus nicht vorgesehen. Okay. Haben wir es zugelassen, probiert, ruft mal an, kam der Pädiater dazu. 3 Tage später kam eine E-Mail, wir hatten unser erstes Schockraumkind live, in Klammern mit Pädiater, Ausrufezeichen.
Okay. Thank you very much, Frank, for this very interesting talk. What do we have to proceed? Time is going on. The next speaker will be Robert Lloyd from Essex, UK. He is an emergency physician. He is talking about stress and physiological reactions to stress, and he has written a mental toughness manifesto, I'm right? And there is a very interesting blog from his time in South Africa, so welcome.
Okay. Guten Morgen. I'm going to have to switch to English because that is the extent of my German. My name is Robert Lloyd. As mentioned, I'm an emergency medicine trainee in the UK. And the title of my talk is, Have You Ever Been Stressed? And the reason it's called that is because really what this talk centers around is an intensely stressful professional experience that I had, and the reflections that I've had on that experience and how that's affected my career, and I hope that's of some benefit to you guys in the audience. Since this experience, I've developed a very strong interest in performance psychology, which is somewhat related to the previous speaker. But I will say that I'm not qualified to be an authority on this topic. I'm certainly the least experienced man on this stage. Where my value for you all lies is in this story I have to tell. And it's a fairly frightening story about a time when I worked in a township in South Africa, in a small township emergency department. And it's the lessons that I learned there, specifically about the topic of mental toughness, which has inspired this talk, and I'd like to call it my mental toughness manifesto. So what is mental toughness? I think that's the first thing to establish. I think it's a vague term that quite often gets written off as kind of meaningless sports cliche. You'll hear footballers talking about it at the end of the game as the reason they won, or it doesn't really get the respect it deserves from the intellectual community I think that we all consider ourselves a part of. And I think that's a huge loss, because what mental toughness represents to me is a sort of group of traits which dictate that you're able to produce the goods when it really matters, during moments of high stress, when the stakes are high. And I think that we can all agree that emergency medicine and all its different subspecialties, that's crucial for us. We need to be able to produce the goods when it matters. We need to be able to produce the goods when the time is critical. And my take-home message from this talk is, my belief is that it's possible to strengthen our mental toughness by making small tweaks to the way that we think. What makes somebody mentally tough? It comes down to these two statements. So, I'm 100% committed. I think that we can all agree that we've come this far, we've got through our medical training, we see the patients, we do something so noble, we're all committed. That's not a problem. What is a problem is the second statement, feeling challenged. So the process that we all go through when we're met with a difficult situation, whether it's in work or outside of work, is we go through what's called a two-step cognitive appraisal. We ask ourselves internally two questions. You've got a sick patient in front of you. What is required of me? What task do I need to complete? And then you ask, do I have what it takes? Do I have the mental capacity? Do I have the skill set? Do I have the team around me? Do I have the equipment that I need? And once you've weighed those two up, you either become in the challenged mindset, so you've decided that you are capable of completing the task at hand, you have everything available that you need, and you go into what's called the challenge mindset. It's like being in the zone. A lot of sports people call it being in the zone. Your sympathetic nervous system is jacked, your heart rate's up, but you feel in control, you feel confident, and you feel like you're going to complete the task very easily. That's as opposed to feeling threatened. So all of the resources you have around you, your skill set, your knowledge base, your team, your equipment, does not meet the demands of the situation. When that happens, you have catastrophic performance decline, and that's because your cognition is impaired, your perception's impaired, and your mental bandwidth goes down. And that's because not only is your sympathetic nervous system going into overdrive, but your HPA axis starts pumping out a horrible hormone called cortisol. Let's all get in the threatened mindset. I want everybody to imagine that they're in the shoes of this performer. There's one more bit. How do you all feel? Do you feel? Difficult to say whether James Kingston, who that is a high performer or just really stupid. It's difficult to. But I play that video because I think that everybody in the room probably had sweaty palms. You were all completely focused on the screen. You know, a tiger could have walked across the front and you might not have seen it. That's how I felt when I was working in South Africa. I had that kind of involuntary, visceral, frightened feeling, and I'm going to tell you my story. It starts in Sydney. So I did what a lot of UK junior doctors do after I finished my internship. I headed for greener pastures in Australia in search of what I wanted to do with my career. I was unsure about the specialty that I wanted to pursue, and I found emergency medicine out there. And I fell deeply in love with the specialty and knew that it was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. But these were the kind of major trauma patients that I was seeing out there. Major trauma was not something that was seen in the hospitals that I was working at. They were major trauma bypass centers. So I was seeing little old ladies that had fallen off their wheelchairs and fractured their hips. That was my trauma portfolio. And for that reason, I wanted to see the proper stuff. I wanted to see some stabbed chests and some gunshot abdomens. And so I was told, why don't you go to South Africa? That's the mecca of major trauma. You should check it out. So I did it. I hunted down a 3-month elective. And in March 2015, I found myself living in Greenpoint in Cape Town, which is a beautiful city. I hadn't started working yet. And I was emailing with the boss, who was a chap called Sardlari, who was arranging my elective. And he told me that if you want to get the most out of your experience, you need to work in a place called Carley Hospital, which is a township hospital just outside Cape Town. And he told me that if you really want to get what you want out of this, you've got to work the following shifts. You've got to work night shifts, you've got to work weekends, and you have to work the last weekend of every month. And the reason for that is that in the last weekend of every month, on that Friday, the entire township gets paid. And when the township gets paid, the township residents spend most of their paycheck on alcohol. And when they do that, they get very drunk. And when they get very drunk, they get very violent. And when they get very violent, the hospital sees lots of trauma. So for that reason, you must work these shifts. And it just so happened that my first shift fell on the final Friday of that month. And I was excited, didn't know what to expect. And I remember very vividly being picked up in my luxurious rented apartment in Greenpoint. My girlfriend at the time, she's now my wife, was actually doing her yoga instructor's teacher's training. I remember her returning from her day of yoga that day, and I was picked up by my colleague called Nick. Picked me up in his nice car, and it was a beautiful sunset. The sunset was setting over Table Mountain, and we drove out of the city, and I admired the city from a distance. And I remember sort of thinking, isn't this wonderful? Aren't I a great bloke? And I puffed my chest out and started boasting about all of my emergency medicine credentials and all my time in Australia and all the procedures that I'd done and what a great future I had ahead of me. Incredibly embarrassing, because little did I know the nosedive that I was about to take. So we hit the main road. We exited at Cape Town and we hit the motorway. And gradually, the city became more and more in the distance, and what emerged is a completely different landscape. You have, as far as the eye can see, township, so shanty towns everywhere. It became a bit more intimidating. The sun had set now, so it was dark. And we took a left to Spine Road, which is this famous road, which is the way to get to Carley Hospital from that particular motorway. And we hit Spine Road, and I remember so well, we hit a traffic jam that was just trickling along. Either side of this dirt road that we were sat on, barbecues were kicking off, fires blazing, everybody drinking, everybody shouting, really aggressive, people getting into fights, bassy music, children running around everywhere, bizarrely enough, and then jumping onto the hood of our car, jumping onto the windscreen, banging on our windows. I grew up in West London. I'd never been through anything like this before in my life. So, very intimidating. And Nick just told me, for God's sake, don't open the door or the window, and we should be fine. So we get through Spine Road, And we eventually get to the hospital. And the hospital is actually quite a modern-looking building. It's probably the most impressive part of the whole township. It was only built a few years ago. And that sort of hospital structure, that familiar structure, made me feel more relaxed, and my heart rate started to come down. These boxes of human blood were waiting for me at the entrance to the emergency department, which is a fairly ominous sign. But as soon as we walked into the emergency department, everything was familiar. Majors, minors, consultants, registrars, waiting room, everything was stuff that I'd seen before, and I started to feel confident again. We went for a coffee after I met my team that evening, went to the coffee room, and I remember doing the same thing, puffing my chest out, and started talking about how wonderful I was all over again, which was such a mistake, because the door slammed open, and a nurse walks in, and she says, 2 gunshot abdomens. The South African doctors all stood up and immediately walked very calmly to resus. I sat there in my chair, and I thought to myself, I've never seen a single gunshot wound in my entire life, and now I have 2. And then it really kicked off. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to absorb that slide. If you don't know what a community assault is, it's where the community takes the law into their own hands because of a lack of police presence in the township, because it's so dangerous. And so if somebody's stolen a chicken from a local market, 10 of the guys, local guys, will beat them to within an inch of their life or to death. And those guys turned up by the dozen to the department. So, probably my biggest takeaway from the experience was, wow, these South African doctors are another level. They were calm, they were collected, they communicated so clearly with each other, they were able to see all the patients seemingly and do a fantastic job. They located their faculties, they located their performances immediately. You can see Victoria Stevens at the back there. She's a classic example of that. The South African guys, they know how to operate under pressure. I, on the other hand, was way out of my comfort zone. And I have reflected on the experience constantly since I had it. And some very interesting things have happened to me. Some very interesting things happened to my cognition and to my physiology. I was unable to stop these persecutory negative thoughts entering my head. What are you doing here? Why did you even think about doing this? There's no way that you're going to be able to do this job. You're going to catch HIV. All of these horrible, horrible things just came into my brain involuntarily. When I tried to actually approach a task, I was unable to prioritize. So I would say, right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try and put this cannula in. And then I'd realize, hold on a minute, this is pointless. There's somebody dying over there. And I'd run over to the other patient and think, right, I'm going to try and suture up this wound. Or just complete decision paralysis. I would stop midway through the task and move on to another thing. And hours would go by, and I would achieve absolutely nothing. I was visibly shaking. So if I attempted a procedure, I wasn't able to do it. And even if I was trying to help one of the South African doctors do a procedure, trying to assist them, I was shaking so much I could barely pass them any equipment. But perhaps the most vivid memory is that when I was having a conversation with somebody 2 meters away from me, I couldn't hear what they were saying. It felt like a bomb had gone off either side of me. I had total auditory exclusion. I was a useless doctor to my patients, and I was a useless member of my team. And it happened again the following shift. And it happened again the following shift. Over and over again, I was failing miserably. I was performing suboptimally. And I was extremely disappointed in myself. I'd spent the last couple of years building an identity around being an emergency medicine doctor. Some of my mates had done anesthetics. Some of my mates had done cardiology, GP, what have you. I decided to do emergency medicine. I dealt with the emergencies. I could do something positive for these patients when they walked through the door. And suddenly, I was found wanting. I was in a place where they were practicing emergency medicine at its absolute purest, and I was unable to find a performance. But because it had such personal significance to me, I was able to engage with my craft in a completely different way to I ever had before, and that's what this talk is about. I'm going to give you 3 policies, 3 tweaks to the way that I thought during that process. It made me a better doctor, and I incorporate them into my practice now, and I hope that they're of some use to you. Policy 1 is purposeful practice. In emergency medicine, we have to do a lot of the training ourselves. There's not a lot of hand-holding because it's a messy, busy place. We're not going to get a great deal of supervision when we're in training or even when we're senior. Prior to being in South Africa, when I was in Australia and when I was an intern in the UK, I had made this assumption that I was getting better at my job just by turning up every day. Just by virtue of being in the environment, I was getting better at what I did. That is wrong. And I realized that in South Africa. I realized if I was going to put on a performance, if I was going to be a good member of the team, every single time I was at work, I needed to ask myself the question, how can I do this better? How can I make myself better at this tomorrow when I come back? I went from being a naive practitioner to a purposeful practitioner. And it was a luxury over there because there was an abundance of pathology. I could select the patients I wanted to see. I could select the procedures I wanted to do, lumbar punctures, chest drains, RSIs, whatever I wanted. I select that skill, drill it over and over again because the patients kept coming in, get the feedback from the South African guys, and then improve my performance. Without realizing, I'd embraced the principles of deliberate practice, which is the mantra of this chap, Anders Ericsson. I have two book recommendations for you today. The first one is Peak by Anders Ericsson. You must read this book. These 4 principles underlie the process of getting better at any pursuit, and it's the same goes for medicine. Every time you're at work, every time you want to improve something, select a skill, set yourself a measurable target. I'm going to do this many of these today. Be focused. Put your smartphone away. Every time you look at Twitter, you reset yourself 18 seconds. The luxury of being in South Africa is there was no Wi-Fi. Get immediate feedback when you can. If you've got somebody there who's better at you than at doing it, get them to watch you do it and give you real-time feedback. Don't get feedback 10 minutes later. Don't get feedback 2 weeks later during a work-based assessment. Get it now as you're doing it. But the most important thing, and the thing that I really learned when I was out there, is get out of your comfort zone. I never felt comfortable seeing so many patients that were in such dire straits. These young people, peri-arrest because of a stabbed heart, because of a stabbed chest. I spent so much time out of my comfort zone, I became comfortable being uncomfortable. And that made me feel like I was adapting, that I was getting better at what I did. I think in emergency medicine, we fall into that trap way too often. We cherry pick our patients. We love feeling like we're nailing it. I love seeing the chest pains. I love seeing the abdominal pains. Get out there and see the patients that you're not very good at. Practice what you're rubbish at. Policy 2. Cognitive reframing. This is a different phase of the game. A salient feature of feeling threatened, as I discussed earlier, is I was polluted with these horrible negative thoughts. It has a devastating effect on your performance. If you're telling yourself that you're not going to do the job, it's very unlikely that you're going to do it. It's very unlikely you're going to prove yourself wrong. We must find a way of pressing Control-Alt-Delete on our thoughts and inserting something positive. I think I learned this as a young tennis player. Being out in South Africa made me reflect a lot on my junior tennis career as a distinctly average county performer. When my back was against the wall, say I was match point down in a tie break, I would intuitively engage in a conversation with myself. Externally, I'd say the words to myself. Get your first serve in. Get the ball to his backhand where you know he's weak. You know you can do this. You've beaten this guy before. I would draw a line under what had gone on before, and I'd insert positive content. I'd press Control-Alt-Delete, positive. We're ready to go. I think that framing your own narrative in that way has enormous relevance to frontline healthcare. When I was in Kailicha, I would jolt my mind out of a persecutory spiral. Stop, you're okay, you've done this before. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Make sure that you go above the bottom rib. Don't attack the neurovascular bundle. Pull the laryngoscope back, get the epiglottis interview. Engaging in a conversation with yourself. Make yourself insert positive content. Makes a huge difference. Another aspect of cognitive reframing is the incremental steps approach. Only contemplate the next point. That was what I told myself when I was a tennis player. Don't think about the overall goal. Don't think about the mountain that you need to climb. Think about the next step you need to make. Imagine the morbidly obese patient with a large beard, gargling blood, GCS3, you need to get a tube down. Don't think about getting the tube between the cords. Think about getting the monitoring on. Think about oxygenation. Think about briefing your team. Think about getting the equipment together. Only contemplate the next thing, because then it's a challenge. Manageable challenges as opposed to one giant threat. My final policy is black box thinking. My second book recommendation for you is Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed, who this is. After I left South Africa, I read this book, and it made me realize something that I'd done very well. And that was the way that I responded to failure. I realized because I was on such a mission to improve, for the first time in my career, I was open and honest with myself about mistakes, and I was willing to share them with my colleagues. We talked a little bit about aviation in the previous talk, and I'm going to go a bit off piece here just to illustrate this point. They're not directly comparable industries. There's a lot more ways for a patient to die than there are ways for a flight to go down. But let's look at this statistic. On average, 1 in every 8.3 million commercial takeoffs goes down. Compare that to healthcare. In the US alone, the equivalent of two jumbo jets goes down every day in terms of medical error, avoidable medical error. That's just in the US. 2 jumbo jets a day. As I say, to repeat myself, they're completely different industries, but that is an undeniably gargantuan difference in safety. Why is aviation such a staggeringly high-performance safety industry? They have an institutional culture of learning from failure. Every plane is equipped with 2 black boxes. When the plane goes down, they find the fuselage, they get the boxes, they interrogate the data. One has recorded the conversation between the 2 pilots in the cockpit. The other records the electronic decision-making from the cockpit. They interrogate all that data. They learn the lessons, they find out what happened, and then they distribute those lessons to every single person that might benefit in the whole aviation community. Error is not viewed as a weakness. It's seen as an opportunity, a precious opportunity for growth. I would argue that healthcare is largely the polar opposite. Failure is stigmatized in what we do. Doctors are supposed to be infallible in the eyes of the public. Mistakes are swept under the rug. And when we can't do that, what do? We play the blame game. Big generalizations, I know, but I'm sure that we're all very familiar with this. A recent tragic example in the UK is the Hadiza Bawagaba case, which I won't talk about too much, but in my opinion is one of the most tragic and despicable scandals certainly in my career. And it's a classic example of the blame game being played. The black boxes philosophy can be applied at the individual level, and that's the point I'm trying to make. When I was in South Africa, I was desperate to improve my performance. I needed to know what I'd done wrong. I was hungry to know what my failures were. I was hungry to know where my mistakes were. I would make myself ask the silly questions because it no longer represented an existential threat to me. It represented a guide for my purposeful practice, which is my first policy. Let's own our mistakes. Let's force ourselves to face potentially ugly truths when we're out there. Let's pay attention to the best possible signposting for getting better, and that's our failings. There's a big difference between failing and being a failure. So I'll briefly return to my story. By the end of 3 months in Carley, I'd not become a Jedi under pressure. I wasn't some resus master, and I was nowhere near as bulletproof as these South African doctors. But by the end, my commitment never dwindled. I felt far more challenged as opposed to threatened, and my identity, which once was in question as an emergency doctor, was strengthened by the experience. I found a way to make myself mentally tougher, and that was by purposefully practicing, asking myself the question, how do I get better at this? How do I make myself better? Cognitively reframing in the heat of battle, and being at one with failure, black box thinking.
One of my direct subordinates, one of my guys that worked for me, he would call me up or pull me aside with some major problem, some issue that was going on, and he'd say, "Boss, we got this and that and the other thing." And I'd look at him and I'd say, "Good." And finally one day he was telling me about some issue that he was having, some problem, and he said, "I already know what you're going to say." And I said, "Well, what am I going to say?" He said, "You're going to say good." He said, "That's what you always say. When something is wrong and going bad, you always just look at me and say, good." And I said, "Well, yeah. When things are going bad, there's going to be some good that's going to come from it. Didn't get the new high-speed gear we wanted? Good. Didn't get promoted? Good. More time to get better. Oh, mission got canceled? Good. We can focus on another one. Didn't get funded. Didn't get the job you wanted. Got injured. Sprained my ankle. Got tapped out? Good. Got beat? Good. You learned. Unexpected problems? Good. We have the opportunity to figure out a solution." That's it. When things are going bad, don't get all bummed out. Don't get startled. Don't get frustrated. If you can say the word good, guess what? It means you're still alive. It means you're still breathing. And if you're still breathing, well, now you still got some fight left in you. So get up, dust off, reload, recalibrate, re-engage, and go out on the attack.
Everything I've talked about is in much more detail on my blog, ponderingem.com. I've written a 4-post series called My Mental Toughness Manifesto. Check it out. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for this very emotional and impressive talk. I'm sure there's some questions from the audience. Yes. First you get the microphone.
Thank you for this very interesting talk. The slide you showed earlier with the 32 stab chests and so on, was that in the time frame of 3 months or a smaller time frame?
No, that was one shift.
Well, okay.
And it was actually probably in the space of about 6 hours. And bear in mind, those are just the trauma statistics. So forget your septic shock, HIV positive CD4 count of 4 patients. Forget your floridly psychotic, acute psychosis patients. Forget a waiting room full of about 200 people that have been there for longer than a week. That was just the trauma stats. So this is a completely different ballgame these guys are playing. Is that all? All right. Thanks very much, guys.
Well, there's another question,
Oh.
Simon.
So, Robert, if you were thinking about how you would prepare for this in the future, if you were going to consider doing an attachment in South Africa, which, you know, I know several people now, and you've advised several people on going over there. What advice would you give to somebody to go there?
I think that in terms of the technical skills, I wouldn't have done it differently, but I would have loved to have had more preparation for the emotional impact that it has, seeing that many young people that severely injured and dying. So the thing that I think is really shocking, coming from a place, an environment that we work, you're not used to seeing young people die. And in South Africa, it happens so much. And I wish that I had read my own blog before I went over there, because it would have opened my eyes to what I was about to encounter, and I could have tried to anticipate it. But to be honest with you, I think if you've never experienced anything like it before, it's just going to hit you square in the face, and you've got to try and pick yourself up from it. I don't really know how you can prepare yourself other than to try and anticipate it by reading beforehand. It's difficult.
Would you do it again?
100%. 100%. It's the best thing that I've ever done professionally and personally. And I feel like a different person as a result of the experience. I would recommend it to anybody, and if anybody wants to come up to me afterwards and get the details of how to do it, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. So let me introduce the next speaker. Is my co-host Simon Carley from Manchester, UK. He is professor for emergency medicine, and he has invented a virtual hospital and is really a pro concerning social media. I'm just a witness here. And thank you very much for your talk.
We're good to go. Can you hear me? Good afternoon. Are you okay? You feeling good? Okay. So we're going to be talking about a few things in the next half an hour, but I do need your participation in this. So there are things which I'm going to ask you to do, and some of them are going to make you feel uncomfortable. They're not going to make you feel as uncomfortable as Rob in Kailicha, but I'm going to give you some challenges if we go along. So I've got half an hour-ish to talk to you about coaching, because this was the title that we agreed with Simon Orlob earlier this year. But I'm actually going to expand it a little bit more, because when we think about coaching, and Robert, you talked about it in your talk, we need to think of that in a wider sort of sphere, and that's the sphere of feedback in general. And what I'm hoping to do is at the end of this, you will leave this conference and you will do feedback differently. Every single time you either get it or give it, you will do something differently. If that doesn't happen, you can come to Manchester and tell me. But it's a long way, so I'm fairly safe, I think. So what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about a little bit about the need for feedback, about what it really means to us as professionals and high-performing professionals. We're going to talk about different types of feedback. We're going to talk about some difficult feedback. And then we're going to talk about the amount that you give, because it's probably not enough. Or maybe it's just the wrong sort. We'll find out. So is feedback important? Yes? Yeah? Yeah? Is it? Well, let's have a think. I'm going to get you to think about this. The first thing I'm going to say is that there's pretty good evidence that feedback is important, but not necessarily the way that we think of it. Do you know who this guy is? Yeah? Roger Federer. Yeah, he's quite good at tennis. Is that true? He's okay, yeah. In fact, he's really, really good at tennis. Really, really good. And he has a coach, doesn't he? Because he needs feedback. He needs to know whether he's done well, what he can improve on. And he gets other forms of feedback. He knows whether he wins or loses because he gets the match result at the end. And he knows whether he's rewarded by playing tennis because he gets a pay packet and he gets his picture in magazines. He gets feedback all the time, and he has a coach. So do you have a coach? So you guys are all better at medicine than Roger Federer is at tennis. That's what you're telling me. Really? We need to think about this, don't we? We need to think about it. And I'm going to ask you 3 questions now. Just in your own mind, I just want you to stop and think about this. So who here is above average? Yeah, well done, mate. Who's below average? Who's a little bit shy and doesn't want to say? Yes, thank you very much. It's actually quite difficult, isn't it? I think it's really difficult for you to know whether you're good or you're bad from inside your own brain. I'll tell you now, everybody else you work with, they know. The people who you train, they know. Your bosses, they know. But do you know? How do you find out? How do you get through that barrier so that you can understand where you can improve your game and how you can do it? So I just want you to speak to the person next to you now and tell them about what you feel about getting feedback on your performance. Is it good? Is it bad? Does it work? So just 20 seconds, just talk to the person next to you and tell them whether you get great feedback in your work. Okay, so we won't go on too long, partly because there's not that much time and partly because I can't understand a word you're saying. But that's my problem of not speaking German. There'll be lots of things that you'll have talked about. We're not going to go backwards and forwards on this and talk about it. But you will no doubt have talked about feedback, about sometimes when it's made you better. I suspect many of you will talk about times when it wasn't a great experience, it wasn't necessarily positive. And it was quite difficult for you either to give feedback to somebody or to receive it. You know, it's a tricky area. And we don't find it particularly easy, and we don't find it particularly normal for us to do it in our practice. In fact, in reality, we get lots of feedback in life, don't we? We do things where we get a real measure of whether we've done well or not. We get things like exams, postgraduate exams, qualifications, promotion, things like that in the workplace. And for those of you who are married or with long-term spouses, there's lots of feedback if you don't take the bins out on a Thursday. You know, you will get an information back. And of course, for those of you in a younger generation, then there's always quite a lot of instant feedback on your phone. So how many of you will swipe right from this presentation, I'm not sure. So it's out there all the time. We get feedback. It's a natural form of what we do. But is it constructive and does it work for us? Because this is a fundamental of feedback. If you're an educator, if you're in a higher position, if you're a senior person, you love giving feedback. I'll give feedback to Rob later. It'll be fine, because I'm in the position of power, and it's great. It feels a little bit different when you're on the other side of that, doesn't it? When you're receiving it. And that's an issue. There is a disconnect when we're giving these conversations between what goes on. So we're going to play another little game now, if that's okay. So I've got a little exercise for you. Again, it's with somebody sat next to you. And all I want you to do is just over 30 seconds. One of you is going to choose to receive, and one of you is going to choose to give. Okay? And I want you to give the other person some feedback. And I want you to give them some feedback on their appearance today at this conference. So off you go. Be brave. Go on. Just get out there and give some feedback on that person next to you on how they're dressed today for this conference. Okay, so we've had some feedback. How did that feel, folks? Did you get some nice feedback from these people? These lovely people in the room? Did you get some nice feedback? Yeah? Okay, good. We had some feedback. You had some feedback for me?
Well, I don't like your tie, really. The colors of your tie.
Seriously? This is my regimental tie.
Yeah. The colors, just of course.
Honestly, you come all this way. Thank you. Right, I think that what will have happened in this room here is you will have experienced, amongst all the people here, 3 sorts of feedback. Because there are, broadly speaking, 3 types of feedback that you get. And the first is what we call appreciation. It's the sort of feedback that you just say, hey, you know what? Good job, well done. It's what people want sometimes when they ask for feedback. They just want to be told that they're doing okay. And you need to differentiate that from what we call coaching. And coaching is a subset, and that's where you identify that there's something that needs to be done. So you identify this is what you've done, and this is how you're going to improve. And the last is evaluation. So did you perform to the level? Now, that might seem fairly obvious, but if you get this wrong, it's a fundamental of giving feedback. It doesn't work. So another way of thinking about this is when people ask for feedback or when you're giving it, sometimes they just need to be motivated. They just need to be appreciated. So appreciation leads to motivation. Sometimes they want coaching, which is direction. How do we do this differently? The things that Robert was talking about. And lastly, it's about evaluation. How did you come up into this? Now that's fine. So you've got those 3 things. Now what you need to do now is close your eyes, if you may. And if you're one of the people who received feedback, put your hand up in the air. So it should be half of you. So right up in the air. Just have a think now. Did you really want, when that person was going to give you feedback, and it's artificial, did you want appreciation, coaching, or evaluation? Put your hand down if you got what you wanted. Okay, open your eyes, folks, look around. Okay, I count 1 hand. Because the problem is, if you get a disconnect between the 2 things, it's really bad. If you're at the end of Robert's night shift in Kailicha, and you come on in the morning and say, Robert, I'm going to give you some feedback for last night. So let me sit you down and talk to you about how you managed that trauma case at 3 o'clock in the morning. Because do you know what? I'm not sure I would do that the same way that you did. Because in our practice, I don't know whether have you seen the protocols that we're doing? And do you think Robert needed that then? He just needed to go, good job. So getting this connection between the two things is really important, and it goes wrong on a frequent basis. So how do you get that better? First lesson is, when you ask for feedback, or when you're giving it, you actually physically ask people, what do you want from this? What do you actually want from this feedback? Do you want me to just tell you whether you're doing a good job? Do you want specific coaching, in which case, what is it about? Or do you just want to know where you are? Are you performing well for where I expect you to be at the moment? And if you do that, that will transform the conversations that you have. There is nothing worse than giving coaching when it should be appreciation, or appreciation when it should be evaluation. Even appreciation's bad as well. Because if you're doing your chest drains, Robert, and you really want coaching about how to suture it in better, and you say, give me some feedback on that chest drain, and somebody comes up and goes, good job. What the hell use is that? It's a waste of everybody's time. So this is really important. First message. The second message is, and you may have got some of your feedback a bit like this, a bit like my feedback from Paul here, is when you receive it, and you've got to think about it from the perspective of the person getting it, the first thing you do is wrong. Well, of course he's wrong about my tie. My tie is really nice, and actually it does go with this shirt because I've worn it before and other people have said it's nice. Thank you very much. I don't care what you think. And the natural thing when you get any form of feedback is to look where people are wrong. This happens a lot. So somebody might send you a letter to say, oh, the 90-year-old patient that you sent to the surgeons last week with dementia, why did you send it to the surgeons? The patient was going to die. Why don't you send it somewhere else? And you go, I'm so busy. This is ridiculous. Why are you sending me stupid letters like this? Why are you so wrong? Why are you wrong? Whereas in fact, what we should be doing whenever we get feedback which we don't agree with is having a think about, why is there a difference in perspectives here? So actually that 90-year-old, do they really want to go to a surgical ward? Or do they want to go to somewhere where they do really good palliative care? They have a point. And so when we hear feedback, when I hear about my tie, we've obviously got a difference about my tie, but actually, well, maybe you're right. Maybe it doesn't go with stripes, and maybe I'll be better with a white shirt next time. Do you see what I mean? As an example. So, I want you to play the game again. I want you to choose somebody else that you didn't give feedback to before, and I want you to give them some feedback on their appearance now, but this time I want you to check what they want in terms of their feedback, whether they want coaching, appreciation, or evaluation. Okay, 20 seconds. Okay, so let's finish that one there as well. So I don't know what you said, but I can tell you from the feeling of stood up here, that sounded a lot more positive. It sounded a lot better. Did that, for those people who received the feedback, did that feel right? Yeah? Okay, good. Very simple. It's not difficult. Do it next week. So let's think about something else now. Let's think about Tabitha. Oh, I hate Tabitha. Tabitha drives me nuts. I think she's awful. She is late again. Again, she's late for the sixth time she is now late in the last 2 months. She turns up to my handover in the morning in the emergency department, 10 minutes late. She's got a Starbucks in one hand. She's got a croissant in the other. She looks fabulous. She says, oh, I've rushed in. It's been so busy. I haven't had anything to do. I haven't had any time. I've rushed here. You know. And you just sit there and you think, really want to punch you in the face. Now, we know she's not got anything going on at home. She's not sick. There's nothing else, magically wrong with her or anything. Are you going to give her some feedback now? Are you going to tell her? Do you want to give her feedback? Do you want to improve her performance? Yeah? Who's going to have a chat to her now on the ward round? I mean, you can get your message. Yeah, thank you very much. You can get your message out now. You can tell everybody else. Everybody will get the message. Who's not going to give it out now? Okay. Who's thinking about it? Who doesn't think they would give it out now, but has done so in the past? Okay, more hands. I agree with you. It's difficult not to do, particularly when you get this sort of thing. So the second thing I'm going to tell you about coaching your team and making feedback work is a quick mental checklist that you go through before you ever give any form of feedback. Number one, is it important? Actually, I have a big issue with timekeeping. If Tabitha was late once, I would have a go at her. But actually, some of my colleagues are not. So is it important really that we give this? Once, you're not going to give feedback on once. 5 times, it probably needs to be done. Is it the right time? Do I have to do it now? And it's very rare that anything has to be done instantaneously if it's about this sort of thing, if it's a problem. If it's about teaching and coaching, as Robert said, you need it right now. So is it the right time to do it? Choose the right time. Is it the right place? Do I do it in the ward round with everybody present? Probably not. And am I the right person to do it? Am I in the right frame of mind? Because if I am angry and I am not in the right place, this will not go well. It is never good to do it when you are in the wrong frame of mind. But do you see how all of these questions are about you as the person giving the feedback more than it is about the person? And that's the flip. We need to think about feedback from the person who's getting it, not from the person who's giving it. Now, that kind of feedback is quite difficult, particularly when, if it's clinical, then we're quite good at giving clinical feedback. But what about when you're talking to people who are being rude to the nurses, who are turning up late, who are writing terrible notes, who are just being a bad person? They're just not a part of the team. Those are difficult conversations. And a lot of the time, we don't have them. Be honest. You know, inappropriate dress, you know, coming to the, you know, that, do you understand what I mean by this? And the reality is we don't have those conversations because they're hard. And they're hard because we often mix up what we're trying to say with our emotions. And we've done quite a lot of work with this. So Natalie May, who I work with in Sydney, Australia, has done a great deal of work about how you have those difficult conversations about things like behavior and interpersonal. Because if you don't address them, they can destroy your team. You know, Robert's my middle grade in the department. If he constantly turns up late, what kind of example is he giving? I need to solve that, but it's a difficult conversation to have. If he's half an hour late, it's easy. But if he's 2 minutes late or 1 minute, you know, that kind of thing. So we've developed, or we've not developed, Natalie developed something called the giraffe technique, which is very, very good for giving feedback in difficult circumstances. Now, the giraffe is the tallest animal in the savannah, and it has the biggest heart. So it's kind, and it has an overview of what's going on. It's not like a snake. A snake is what a lot of feedback is like. It slithers on the ground, you step on it, it bites at you, bites at you, bites at you, it doesn't think. So the giraffe framework is to help you separate out these things. And essentially what we do when we do this is we first focus on the facts before we start talking about emotion. And this is exactly the same as you will do with your wife or husband or partner next week, because it works. It works when you don't take the bins out. So the natural thing will be, I'm really cross with you because it makes me feel terrible, and I can't believe that you're coming in late, and I can't believe that you don't respect us, and I can't believe it's all you language. If you change it to I, and change it. So if Robert was Tabitha, how would that work? It'd be along the lines of, you know, Tabitha. I've noticed, and I've got evidence that you have not been attending on time. So the facts are that you have not attended. There's no emotion involved in that. We agree the facts. And we don't talk about anything else until we agree that the facts are the facts. Then we talk about the emotion from my point of view. So I'm struggling with that because you're a middle grade doctor, you're setting an example, and it makes me very uncomfortable that I can't then hold up standards for other people in the department because you're doing this. And it makes it very difficult for me to do that, and I'm unsure about whether or not you have the values of our department. So you change language. So facts, emotions, then needs. I need you to be here on time. I need you to demonstrate that you can do that, and the task in this case will be a diary exercise. Try that with your spouse next week when you do something bad. It will inevitably work, and it's the most powerful way we've found about handling difficult conversations. The next is about the team. And that's what Simon originally asked us to talk about. A lot of what we talked about so far is about in one-to-one conversations. What about your role in the team and your team leader? And Frank, you talked about the importance of teams and communication and things like that. How do you demonstrate and how do you improve the performance of a team? Well, you probably do things like simulation. Yeah, we've talked about simulation, we talk about human factors in that kind of thing. But does that work the same as when you're in the recess room at 2 o'clock in the morning? Who's the best judge of whether or not you're doing a good job? Who's the best coach? Who's the best mentor? Who's the best observation person about you as a trauma team leader or a resuscitation team leader? It's not somebody from the human factors department or simulation. It's your peers. It's your colleagues. Now, when you're a student and when you're training, there's always a senior or an exam that will tell you whether you're reaching a performance. But looking at those of us here who've got more grey hairs, when was the last time that somebody watched you and gave you criticism or critique on your performance? But why not? If it's good enough for Roger Federer, why isn't it good enough for us? So as a senior person, what we do now for our trauma team is we get another consultant, another attending to come in and watch what we do. And we thought that that would change the way that the trauma team leader performed. So if I was a trauma team leader, Robert was giving me feedback, he would improve me. What we've found is that yes, it does improve the person who's being watched, but the person doing the watching learns more because they have an overview of what's going on, an understanding. And this is another way of changing the culture in your department. If you as a senior are prepared to be seen to be observed, peer-reviewed and critiqued, you will completely change the way that people perceive and understand training in your department. Now lastly, I just want to do this little exercise. This is about praise and criticism. We've talked already that it's good to have things like appreciation. So, I want to split the room down in two. So roughly speaking, this side of the room here, I want you to think of your time when you're an educator, when you're training people. And this side of the room, I want you to think of the time when you are either a trainee or if you are a trainee. Okay? So trainers, trainees. Close your eyes. On a scale of whether or not you got more criticism as a trainee, if you got more criticism than praise when you were training, put your hand up. So if you got more criticism than praise, put your hands up high. Okay. So on the left-hand side of the room, I look at it. So the people who've got their hands up now are open done. As a trainer, do you think you give more praise than criticism? Put your hand up if you give more praise than criticism. Okay. So both sides of the room, keep your hands up. Okay. Open your eyes and look around. So the interesting thing there is that on both sides of the room, you guys think you give more praise than criticism as trainers, and these guys as trainees think that they get more criticism than praise. And this is the case always. And there are two major reasons for this. The first is that when you give praise, we don't make it specific. So I did not like the way you managed that cardiac arrest because there was too much time off the chest. When I give criticism, here's what I think you need to improve, and this is it. When I give you praise, I often go, well done. Means nothing. And so one of the things I need you to do when you go away from here is every time you say something positive, you did that well because. And it's what comes after the because that makes the difference. You naturally do it in criticism anyway. And the other thing is, we're narcissists, we're sad people, and when people say something bad to us, we hold on to it really hard. So we believe the negative and we discard the positive. So if this is your target when you go away next week, you need to give 3 times as much praise as criticism for you to be perceived as one-to-one. So if you want to feel to be balanced, you guys are going to have to do lots more positive. You guys just carry on. Okay? So, that brings us to the end of this. I know it's lunchtime. So just in summary, what can we say? What have we done in the last half hour? I hope I have convinced you that we all need feedback and it matters. And even if you're the best sportsman in the world, you need feedback. We love to give it, but we don't like to receive it. We need to change that. We need to make the reception better. We talked about the 3 types of feedback: appreciation, coaching, evaluation. And we've talked about how we often miss the good stuff when we get a little bit of criticism. We try and discard it, but we should change our mindset and start looking for why it might be right. We talked about behavioral feedback and how that can be really tricky, and we talked about the giraffe technique. And then finally, we've talked about the positive and negative ratio, which needs to be at least 3 to 1. Now, if you want to know anything more about this, if you go to the St. Emmeline's blog, at the beginning of this talk, we published the blog. All the information in there is there. All the links to the science, to the background. The tweets are online. You can come and talk to us. But go forth, give feedback, and heal the sick. Thank you. Time to go.
Thank you very much. We are excellent in time, and thank you to the speakers before. For my part, I've learned a lot of things today, and I will change the type of feedback I will give in future. So hands up, who will change his manner of giving feedback in future? Yeah, everyone. You've won, definitely. Are there some particular questions? We have 5 minutes left.
How long did it take you to establish the kind of feedback culture in your department?
I qualified in 1992. In all honesty, I think I changed personally because I've been on a journey, and I think I changed about 6 or 7 years ago when I first started doing the blog, and I worked with Natalie May, and she changed the way that I thought about feedback, and she just radically changed it. But actually, it's a journey, and one of the things is that if you go away from here as an advocate and say, I want to do this differently, you'll need to work hard to bring your colleagues with you. And changing a culture, there's lots of things we can talk about, like we only ever use first names in our department. You're not allowed to use your second name or your title because we want people to talk to us. We dress the same so that we look the same, we sound the same. We talk online, we use social media. All of these things about changing the way that we have communication are important. But that's taken, well, we're not there yet. It's a journey, it's a journey. But colleagues who I know who knew me 10 years ago, I'm working with a colleague at the moment, and she came back from having spent quite a lot of time in Australia, and she just, after 3 weeks, she said, you've changed. And I have, because I wasn't very good, to be honest.
There's one question. Michael.
Thank you very much for your excellent talk. And I'm wondering, what do you think is safety 1 or safety 2 more powerful in criticizing or in giving feedback, the negative or the positive part of it?
So, do you mean safety 1, safety 2? Is that system 1, system 2?
Yeah, safety 1 is this you made wrong, and safety 2 would be most of the things went okay. There's a little bit, and we focus on the okay things and learning more from role models than from mistakes made.
So mistakes need to be talked about as well. So both of them are powerful. What I would say is that when we give feedback or when we do analysis about when we're going to give feedback, I am much more interested in why people do what they do than what they did. So if we see a patient with appendicitis, so Rob sees a patient with appendicitis, and he comes up and says, do you think this patient's got appendicitis? And I go in and I go, yes. That doesn't really help or train or understand. It's not feedback. What I want to know is why does he think this is appendicitis? So the conversation is, well, the white count is normal. I kind of agree with you. I think this is appendicitis. But how did you handle this information? What, why did you discard this today, but on another occasion you might think it's really helpful? So it's the conversation is around process rather than outcome. And I think that's what I'm saying. So you cannot discard, when things go wrong, you have to have those conversations, mortality, morbidity and stuff. But I think you should also be talking almost as much, if not more, about when things go right. So you have M&M, yeah, mortality, morbidity. So we also have A&A, which is awesome and amazing. So we talk about when things went well as much as when we talk about when things go wrong. Because I want to go to work and think that I did a great job, not that I just wasn't rubbish. That's not a good day. I want to come home and go, yay me, not, yeah, average, nobody died, great.
Overcome the hierarchy problem that still, if you're the boss, others think this is something special, and your opinion is more worth than their opinion.
Okay,
and
so there's a game.
How often are you running against the wall because nobody said stop?
So there's a game that you can play for that. So there's an experiment you can do in your departments next week. Okay, don't do this all the time. But the experiment is you see somebody and you suggest a management plan which is dangerous. And you see if anybody stops you. And if they stop you, you know you've got a good culture. And if they go, yeah, you carry on, mate, they either hate you or you have a bad culture. But we were talking about this on Twitter the other day. You only need to be stopped from giving a 10 times drug error to a child once by a newly qualified nurse in your department to know that your culture is good. And that was me. So I didn't, seriously harm a child because we had a very junior member of staff who could turn to the professor and go, you're wrong. That's what we need. Because I'm terrified of somebody watching me make a terrible error because I'm too senior. That's what scares me.
Thank you very much. Time is over. Time for lunch and good afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.